We have with us Ms. Sunanda Vashisht, who has been through a lot. Now, over the last 1 week, ever since the release of the movie Kashmir Files, many people from an ecosystem have come out and tried to question the veracity of the film and what it depicts. So tonight, viewers, let us speak to those who have actually suffered, who have actually been portrayed, to ask them what they went through. And this conversation will be a conversation we are having on record for posterity, so that once and for all, we hear from the victims firsthand. Sunanda Vashisht, thank you very much. And it's a tragedy that after having gone through a genocidal dance of death, you still have to come out to convince people about what you went through. It's a comment really on the times we live in. Ms. Vashisht, what happened when you found yourself confronted by this demonic targeting of your community because you were Hindus?
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this time. I just want to let you know that this was not a revelation that we were seeing this genocidal dance of death. It was not a revelation of one day. It's not like everything was okay and then it happened one day, suddenly it erupted. It had been building up. Children who have been raised as minorities, we talk about minorities a lot in India, but nobody talks about the real micro minority in Kashmir and how we lived there. It's not what happened after 1989 when it really came out in open. You really have to go to subtle things that were happening before that to understand the magnitude of this tragedy and to understand the magnitude of what was done to us. Even as a child, I knew that if India is playing a cricket match and God forbid if Sunil Gavaskar or Ravi Shastri hit a ball for a six, that meant I had to go under the bed in my house and hide myself because somebody would come and burst crackers outside of, somebody would throw, those stones at our house. Or if India was not doing well in a cricket match, it didn't matter if it was Pakistan or anybody, but if it was not doing well, then they would come and burst crackers outside our house. This is the reason I had written a piece many years ago called Why I Hate Cricket. Till this day today, I am not able to watch a cricket match. This is when people were portraying Kashmir as Yash Chopra's Kashmir. This is the people when time when people were showing, people thought Kashmir was all Pashminas and Kashmir ki Kali and Dal Lake and all the beauty. But nobody understood what was going on with us. When I, as a little girl, used to come out, there was a temple called Ganpat Yar. It was close to my house where I lived. So my father often used to go to that temple. And when we came, the pujari would put a little tika on our head. And the minute we came out, it was almost as if we were trained to do this. And I had seen my father do this. He would come out and he would immediately wipe it. And then I had learned to do it too. Then I would wipe my tika off, and then many years later, when I was in Delhi, and I still used to do it, and people would tell me, why are you doing it? And I hadn't realized that it had become part of my psyche. So things like that had already started. We were already being looked as agents of the state. We were already, even though we were aboriginals, we were already looked as someone who were an impediment to Islamization of Kashmir. Because as long as we were there, Kashmir could not become Nizam-e-Mustafa. Kashmir could not become land of pure, so to speak. think about it. We did not have any political representation. Not one political party in this country thought that why does this micro minority not have any political representation in Kashmir? So all this was building up to the time in 1986 when Anantnag, what they call Anantnag riots, but they were not riots. They were a dress rehearsal for what is going on in what was going to happen. My father was posted in Anantnag district. He was a professor of mathematics. So he was posted in Anantnag district. He came and he told us what had happened in Anantnag, which is another, I come from Srinagar, and he had been traveling through the burnt houses of how Hindu houses had been burnt, selectively had been burnt, and the kind of mayhem that had been wreaked in the streets of Anantnag by butcher of Anantnag, Mufti Muhammad Saeed. I have no qualms of saying that on public television today. Butcher of Anantnag, what he did, it was his constituency. Everybody remained quiet. It was our fault also that we thought it was a one-time incident. We actually thought that maybe this were riots, but they were not riots. Because there was no, what happens in what is a riot? Riot is when two people clash with each other. But there was no two sides of this. Only one side was perpetrating terror on the other side. The other side was doing nothing. There is not one instance where any Kashmiri Hindu has hit back violently. Not one instance in last 32 years. So you cannot call it a riot. You cannot call it a, you cannot give it any other name other than genocide or other than ethnic cleansing, that, genocide that led to ethnic cleansing and that led to exodus. These were all forms of that. So finally, I want to tell you what happened on 19th January. There was curfew in Srinagar. It was my uncle's birthday. So my mother and I, we were in our house in Srinagar, and suddenly there was a curfew break for about 1 hour or so. They used to let people go and get groceries. So my mother said, let's go to our grandfather's house. And because she wanted to wish her brother for his birthday. And she said, let's quickly go and wish him and we'll come back within an hour. We went there, and there was CRPF everywhere. We could see it when we were walking. And then we stayed, and my grandfather said, it's okay. Tomorrow also they will give a break for curfew. Why don't you go tomorrow? Why don't you go back to your house tomorrow? Sure. And just stay overnight. Now it's getting dark. So we stayed overnight. There was no premonition of what is going to happen. Even though Tikalal Tapilu had been killed, Justice Neelkant Ganju had been killed, selected targeting killings of prominent Kashmiri Pandits had already started. But we thought we were ordinary people. And these are, prominent personalities. That is why they are going after the selected people. They want to make them quiet. But we are going to be safe because who are we? We are just ordinary people. So then we stayed there. On that night, there was a V. Shantaram. I clearly remember there was a V. Shantaram film going on the TV, old Western TV. And we all stayed, we were all watching, my grandparents, my mother, I, and my 17-year-old cousin. We were sitting there, we were watching this V. Shantaram film. And my mother, at about 10 o'clock, she walked out. And if you remember old homes, you had to walk through a courtyard to go to the restroom. So as soon as she walked out, she screamed, she yelled. We thought she had fallen down. We rushed after us. And the minute we all sat in the courtyard, the angan, purane gharon mein hota tha, we stood all there, and suddenly we hear noise blaring from loudspeakers from because there were mosques all around, with all the abominable slogans that we had never, Azadi we had already heard before, but we had never heard, as Kashir Bata Rusti Bat Insan, we had never heard that. We had never heard that before. We had never heard Kafiro e Zalimo, Kashmir Hamara Chhod Do. We had never heard women folk on the loudspeakers telling their men, come out and finish these kafirs out. Remember the words that were said, kafir. Remember, there were pure religious connotations to it. How does anyone say that this was a war for self-determination? If you are going to use the word kafir, if you are going to use the word zalim, if you are going to attack us for our faith, if you are going to crowd in mosques and threaten us, how is this not a jihad? So at that point, we did not know it was just, it was all going on all over in the valley. We thought it was just, there were no phones or anything. We didn't even have a phone at that time. So we thought that it was just in our neighborhood. We had been get out for some reason because we were in the heart of Srinagar. We thought we had been get out for some reason. So that night, when the noises just went louder and kept getting louder and louder, my grandmother quietly woke up my 70-year-old grandfather. And I still remember what he told me. He woke up in jiffy and he said, Kabail loot gawa de. What he meant was, have Kabailis returned? Because the fear that he always had, because he had seen first war of Kashmir when Pakistani tribals had come and what they had done in places like Sopore and Baramulla. So he immediately got up and he said, have Kabailis come back? And my grandmother woke him up and said, you need to get up. Look what is happening. By this time, he had memories of what had happened to Hindu women during that Kabaili first war of independence. I do not call it tribal invasion. I do not call it tribal assault. We must use language very carefully. It was first war of Kashmir. That has been completely removed from history books. So he remembered what had happened to women. His first instinct was to get to kitchen. Remember, Rahul, this is a man who has not hurt a fly in his life. He goes to the kitchen, he gets 2 kitchen knives. Then he goes to the attic and he gets one rusted axe. And he rounds up my mother and I in one corner in the house. And he stands at the door and he says, if they come in, I will kill you first. He was saying that to his daughter and to his granddaughter. That was the day my childhood died. I had never seen anything like that. I had never known that your own grandfather would tell you. He knew that there was no chance of us fighting back. So he wasn't there with his axe or knives ready to fight back. He knew there was no chance. He just thought that if anybody comes in, he will just kill us first. And then they would all be dead, it doesn't matter. But at least he had killed us first. Because he was worried that we would meet a much worse fate if we landed in the hands of jihadis.
How did you escape then?
So then, that night, we all were huddled in one room and we just did not venture out. For about 15 days, we didn't move out at all. We were just, thankfully, our house was not attacked, but houses around were attacked. So we were quietly in one place with whatever groceries, or we never went back to our house. In 15 days, after 15 days, but by this time, the government had fallen, there was no government in Kashmir. We all know that, and there was no, Jagmohan was still not in Kashmir on 19th, despite what people say. Jagmohan was not even there. He had not even reached Kashmir. So there was no government. There was nobody, people could talk about. One of my relatives, Mr. H.N. Jattu, this has been documented. He had written to JKLF, and that letter has been portrayed. He's saying, now that you have started this jihad, what are we going to do? What are you thinking about Kashmiri Hindus now? What do you want? Next day, his assistant, Ashok, was shot dead. So we clearly knew what was our answer by then. So after the 19th January, people started moving out. Everybody. It was a mass exodus. One day you would hear people, you would see your neighbor in their house. Next day, middle of the night, they had all left with his shirt in their bags because everybody was on hit list.
And
My uncle was
it
on hit
was
list.
in modern Indian history the biggest exodus. Now, very quickly, Ms. Vashisht, and I don't want to hurry you up here, but it is important that you answer this question. Why do you think you have had to now suffer the ultimate indignity of coming on national TV to tell your story? Why do you believe, or rather, who do you believe actually? And let's, if you want to name people, name them. Who do you believe is responsible for casting you as unreliable?
You know, when we reached Delhi, we saw a totally different environment. We saw that was even nobody was even concerned. It's not like we did not, knock doors.
But why?
It's not
Why
like we
weren't they
didn't ask
concerned? Why
people
weren't they
to
concerned?
save us.
What was holding these people back from taking up your cause?
Because it was a blot on the secularism model that had been built would have been destroyed by then. Then it wouldn't mean anything, because the minute Kashmiri Hindus are never considered victim in this house. Hindus are not, period. Hindus are never considered victim. It goes against any kind of narrative that has been built. So
now,
the Congress party,
I just want to say,
everyone who was there,
Sunanda
any other
Vashisht,
political party, Janta Dal,
sure,
or whoever was there.
No, I understand. You know, Sunanda Vashisht, viewers, is not trying to stir the communal pot. Yeah. All she has done over the last 15 minutes is to tell her story. It is what she has experienced. Warts and all. And let me tell you, viewers, there is no other politer way of putting it out there. Let me also tell you, viewers, that had we really been a secular, truly secular democracy, we would have had set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission by now, after holding trials on genocide. I don't believe that victims such as, and survivors rather, brave survivors like Sunanda Vashisht should be sitting here on national TV in 21st century India to convince an ecosystem that they are speaking the truth. It's a shame that this is happening. Miss Vashisht, thank you so much. I didn't want to make you relive those times. It's a compulsion, and I'm glad that you have told your story. And now let me see who is going to come out and challenge it. Thank you very much.